the things it's blown up today with this whole new NPR interview he did. Let's start with his trans jokes controversy, which was sparked by his Netflix special The Closer, though definitely not limited to that. And in the special, among other things, he referenced J.K. Rowling, saying gender is a fact, and then added himself, I'm Team TERF, I agree, gender is a fact. With that and other parts resulting in Netflix employees actually holding a walkout and protest, and the backlash was huge. But it became one of the defining moments of the culture war around comedy.
Do you remember? I remember it like it was yesterday. Oh, yes. Like, do you remember? We were there. We saw it happen. This is why it's so funny. Like, we were there. We remember.
In transgender rights, with it then also being something Dave returned to in other specials and other places. But in this NPR interview, you had Dave saying the whole thing was just blown out of proportion.
So much of that was a media phenomenon. What was happening in actual life versus how the media was reporting on my show. And I feel like the way they reported on that show was rage baiting to some degree. They almost reported on it as if I was doing something other than a comedy show.
And then you had Chappelle going directly at the Republican Party.
And I did resent that the Republican Party ran on transgender jokes. You know, I felt like they were doing a weaponized version of what I was doing. I didn't. It's not what I was doing.
Chappelle then also told the story of being on Capitol Hill and saying that, he was taking photos with whoever asked, dozens of people without knowing their politics. And then
here comes Lauren Boebert. And she said, can I get a picture? And I'd already taken 40 pictures. I didn't want to say no in front of everybody, but I didn't know the phrase. I respectfully declined. So I just took the picture. And then she posted a picture before I could even get from there to the show and says something to the effect of just two people that knew that it's just two genders. She instantly weaponized it. Or politicize it. So I got to the arena and I lit her ass up for doing that.
And that post from Boebert's actually still up. And at the time, you had a lot of people.
Wait, just 3 people who understand that there's only 2 genders. Just 3 people who understand that there's only 2 genders. Did he not agree with this when he said he was Team TERF? There's 3 people who understand that there's only 2 genders. Okay.
People seeing Dave smiling with her and assuming that he'd gone MAGA. But at least based on what he's saying now, he's saying that was never his intent. And while you've seen a decent amount of people celebrating him, going after Republicans, though a lot of Republicans not loving that, you also have people pushing back on Chappelle here, saying that he's rewriting history, that he's kind of trying to manipulate the narrative. And then also with that, arguing that he was already using Republican talking points in his material, so he shouldn't be surprised by the audience that followed. But then you also saw people defending Dave's argument, saying that there is a difference between a comedian working through ideas on a stage and a political party that's turning those ideas into campaign messaging. But that also wasn't the only controversy that he addressed. There was also the backlash over performing at the Riyadh Comedy Festival in Saudi Arabia, where critics accused him and other comedians of turning a blind eye to human rights abuses for a paycheck.
The United States government does business with the Saudis. Netflix does business with the Saudis. Everyone, the Saudis finance tons of movies. All these, I see them financing boxing matches and all these things. And none of these things were an issue until I went there. And why is that? As soon as a black man can make money off the plantation, they try to tell you that the money is dirty. Well, okay, I'll go home and spend the money with actual slave owners on it. Where is this clean money?
Chappelle also argued that exporting comedy...
Not to be that girly, but that's kind of why they want to dismantle capitalism. Because, yeah, liberation is going to come through the means of capitalism. So, it's, he kind of made the point that there is no, you can't, so don't. And also, he's in a position of incredible privilege. He doesn't have to. God knows he's made a lot of money over the years. He doesn't have to take another job for the rest of his life. He could live off of interest, put into, some stocks or something. And that has a whole conversation about ethics, but he doesn't have to. So that it's that idea. It's that idea that how am I supposed to make money? Why do you need to make more money? How much is Dave Chappelle worth? A lot.
Audiences who can't always speak freely is actually one of the most positive things American culture can do.
That must have felt incredibly cathartic if you can't.
Possibly between $70 and $100 million. Oh no, how will he live? How will he survive? Oh my God, I really feel for these men.
Say everything you want to say, but you see somebody model that behavior. Oh man, you're gonna want it. So if you think of all the violence and all the things we export to the Middle East, I think our culture is the best export we got.
And again, you saw people split. Some saying that his defense, it makes sense. But you had others saying they felt like it was weird that he mentioned that he was a black man and he was trying to turn this into a situation about race because a lot of people were angry at other comedians regardless of their race. Others arguing that it's very weird that he's trying to act like a hero for bringing comedy somewhere when he's getting such a big paycheck. And actually on the note of gaining wealth from the Saudis, we then get to Trump. Dave Chappelle was also asked about Trump, specifically the idea that some people find him funny.
Maybe if he wasn't president, I think that was funny. Or maybe at times, I do think, that's wearing thin. There are funny things about him. Like if I were to talk about him, I could, it would be funny. But I think what he does is so consequential.
Right, so essentially Chappelle is saying there is...
I mean, I appreciate the sentiment. So little late, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like I agree. There are a lot of funny things about Trump. Trump isn't funny, but there are things you can definitely laugh about. But the issue is, right? And this is the problem with I think the way that men engage in power or the system allows them to engage in power is like, did you see JD Vance lecturing the Pope? JD Vance was lecturing the Pope about theology. And I'm like, where do y'all get off? Like, yeah, that's funny because like you're stupid, but also that is so crazy. That is, as a former Catholic, as a girlie who was raised Catholic, as parents who are very pissed at Trump right now, that is crazy for JD Vance to lecture the Pope, who of course has a master's and like a doctorate and stuff, like in theology, about theology. Like that is the most absolute crazy thing I've ever heard in my whole life. I think he has a master's in theology and he's a canon lawyer for the church. Like, sir.
The line, and humor requires some distance from consequences. This idea seeming to be when consequences are real, things like wars, constitutional crises, people's lives being destroyed, the isn't he funny framing stops working. And then the final thing I'll say that has popped and spread from this interview so far is that NPR noted that Dave, he's been ending his shows by telling audiences to stay sane together and take care of each other. And you had him explaining why in clips that have been getting shared around.
Information and the types of things we're hearing every day in the news and seeing around us, it's almost like a psychological torture. What we're collectively going through, the amount of animosity we have for one another. It takes so much courage sometimes just to come see a show, and they come and we're together. And I feel like the exercise of doing that show is like people actively trying to stay sane together. Like let's just stay at it. Like remember how good it feels to be together. Take care of one another.
Right, and then on the broader question of free speech and comedy, whether a stage should make room for every voice, even ones that you disagree with, you had Dave saying this.
I don't silence your champions. In fact, I make space for your champions to have a voice. But I'm not your champion, and I am someone else's. You can't silence the team that you don't like, what they're saying, but you do have the opportunity to go on after them. Say your piece. If I see these same people throughout my life, then clearly they're part of my community, and everyone's in it. There's trans stand-up comedians. There's every sexuality, every kind of identity, and we support one another.
With all that, I gotta ask you.
But like, do they? Because I think the dilemma here is that I'm not actually seeing that. I'm not actually seeing the support. I'm seeing marginalized communities thrown under the bus every second by largely the comedy bubble. So is that true? Is that what's happening? Especially since all of you basically supported Trump or were used as tools for Trump's election. So are we in this together? And we're going to talk about this in a bit because people came to my channel to criticize sort of like, I don't think Brittany believes in like the tent, and that tent represents like all of us together, class consciousness, like coalition, building together past our differences for a greater good, right? The dilemma is the past our differences is again, like the differences are people being basically, I want to say killed, but killed, targeted, discriminated against, like, again, differences are like pineapple on pizza or not, right? Like I'm happy to debate that every day, all day, but we're not debating that. We're debating our like literal existence, right? Like, do trans people exist, right? Which is ridiculous. Like they certainly exist more than Jesus could ever exist, given that I can touch a trans person. I can't touch Jesus. You know what I mean? So like We're living in a world where billions and billions of people believe in an invisible man in the sky before they believe before they were willing to accept the literal human beings in front of them. So are we doing this together? You know what I mean? And reminder that in my ideal world, a one that recognizes we all think differently, we can't all be the same person, I'm fine with you being religious, just as long as your rules are for you and not for me. The dilemma is their religion, their doctrines often tell them that they have to, basically make more people like them. And I'm saying if you could keep it within your walls and let people to come and go as they want, like leave the religion, come into the religion as much as they want, I'm with you. Right? Like, I'm not here to eradicate religion. I don't think that's the point. Like, I don't think that's good. Right? I think instead we should encourage people to naturally deconstruct on their own. But again, like in their ideal world, I don't know where I fit in. In their ideal world, where do I get to be? Do I get to adopt kids and have jobs and work in schools and exist as who I am? Like, do I get to do that? I don't know. And I don't think Dave knows either. I think it's bullshit. He's rich. He used his platform to cause division. He made conservative centrist people who are anti-trans feel more emboldened in that transphobia. So, apology not accepted. Was that a sorry? Was he even apologizing? I don't even know what this was. And him going on NPR when Trump literally defunded is just a slap in the face. I think in many ways. Or PBS defunded. Sorry. NPR is a nationally public, it's funded nationally, publicly, but they're attacking NPR, right? I don't think they ever got around to actually defunding it, but they defunded PBS and they are looking at NPR, right? So it feels like weird, unless I'm misunderstanding something there. But, when I was growing up, I remember when my cousin first got me into NPR, like a billion trillion years ago, and my mom would say, don't listen to that. That's where the propaganda is. NPR. So conservatives have always hated NPR. NPR has always been evil to them. So for him to go on NPR just feels like, I don't know, a slap in the face.
What are your thoughts here? What are your reactions, your opinions, all of that? I'd love to see it in the comments down below, especially because depending on where you go on the internet, very different reactions. Because there are the Dave Chappelle defenders, but also he has pissed off people on the left and right with this interview. You've got many on the right saying, what is this? Why is he going woke? Why is he throwing Republicans under the bus? Right, a number of them saying things like he's a coward or a hypocrite. And then on the left, while yes, you have people liking that he's taking a shot at Republicans, you have plenty of people saying that he's trying to, one, either rewrite history, or two, he's being disingenuous. You're seeing people say things like Dave Chappelle not understanding how his jokes against trans people contributed to our current political hellscape illustrates how so many of y'all are dumber than you think. And others saying that Chappelle was doing the same thing Republicans were doing at the time. Just instead of gaining power in office, he was making money hand over fist with more Netflix deals. But again,
and him doing the whole like, I'm a comedian. That's why I say your favorite streamers cannot say something like, I'm just a streamer. Charlie Kirk was not just a YouTuber or a podcaster. Like, all of these people just want to be a guy, but then you influence people. That's why I think I take it so seriously, because even as a small creator, guys, even as a smaller creator, a mid-sized creator, I get messages of people telling me, Brittany, I'm doing this because of you. And I'm like, I have to be careful. Like, I have influence, but not even that. My nieces, my nephews, my friends. Hey, Bray, I'm so glad you put me onto this. I've been doing this. Oh, hey, Bray. Oh, Auntie Brittany, da-da-da. We all influence. The question is, are you going to be responsible with how you interact and influence people, right?
Really would love to know your thoughts here. But then we're...
Okay, so that's the part that I think is so interesting, right? It is a whole lack of accountability that plays into these dynamics, and or a fundamental misunderstanding of how much influence you have. And also, like, people care about you. They respect you. They really... When they ask you a question, they're really thinking about it. I take it really seriously when my brothers ask me questions. I take it really seriously when my nieces and nephews ask me questions, even if it's like, my nieces and nephews are being raised very differently than I would raise my kids. But like, okay. And if they go, Auntie Brittany, like, can you believe this happened? I'm like, well, and I would answer in a very serious way, because they're not just kids. You know how people answer kids kind of like, yeah, like they ignore the child. No. That child's asking me a question. It's serious, because they might remember this forever. This might be a story they tell on YouTube 20 years from now. My Auntie Brittany, I'm Auntie Brittany's niece and nephew, and this is what she told me 20 years ago. Okay, this is what they're going to be telling their therapist when they go to therapy later. You know what I'm saying? It's a big deal. They're really asking. So I think Dave Chappelle and all these people forget how young their audiences are. And also, something I want to get into in relation to streamers and Hassan collaborating with like a Charlie Kirk or something is I think people always say like, oh, Hassan wants to collaborate with Asmongold and Charlie Kirk, which by the way, Brittany 5 years ago would have been on board with. Brittany 5 years ago would have been like, great idea. That's what I'm doing. That's what I used to do. I used to want to collab with everybody in hopes to build bridges. 100%. I love the sentiment. Problem is that when people say, oh, like, Hassan, as an example, will collab with Asmin, and Asmin viewers will see Hassan. Don't you understand that Hassan viewers will also see Asmin? Because you think if they're watching Hassan, they'll never go to Asmin. But I know how this really works, and I don't know why you don't know this. The same amount of people that might be watching Hassan have the same probability of becoming Asmin viewers. Because you forget how many centrists, how many borderline Republicans watch at Hassan. So you have to understand, it's not just Hassan being introduced to Asmin, it's Asmin being introduced to Hassan viewers. And that's the problem. You keep thinking that's not what's happening. That's why Charlie Kirk, that's why all these people, especially Charlie Kirk, of course he wants to debate Hassan. Of course. What do you mean? That's like nothing but a benefit for him. So 2 weeks before he died, Hassan was supposed to, or 2 weeks after he died, he was supposed to collab with him. And I get collab, debate, whatever. And I understand that in certain circles, it's like, okay, when do we come to discuss these ideas? Well, I think you have to discuss the ideas with people who are more serious. And I think you should make it clear that these people are not serious by making clear that they are entertainers and or even though you're an entertainer, you're serious. So when Dave Chappelle says like, I'm a comedian, I'm doing comedy, what he's also missing is that a lot of people think he's a philosopher because a lot of comedians like Carlin felt like that. And I would say that in some ways he's doing philosophy, but in many ways he's doing, he's making a statement of culture on culture. And if you're going to make a statement on culture, it's going to feel like people like you're putting out a moral statement and they're going to take you seriously, right? So Dave Chappelle isn't just a comedian. George Carlin wasn't just a comedian. And honestly, a comedian is in many ways a communication vessel for the people, to the people. So it's a very serious position, really. And that's why I think there's like kind of like D-list celebrities and A-list celebrities. And I think that A-list celebrities have a tendency to speak to the hearts and souls of people, which is why people follow them. Oh, I really like that guy. He feels like me. I mean, you can even take a white guy who's married to the black lady. What's his name? He's angry at his dad all the time, but he's like very liberal because his wife has inspired him to be more progressive. His name is, I don't really watch comedians, sorry, Bill Burr. Thank you, chat. Bill Burr is a great example of this, where like we've seen in real time him feel so relatable to people. He really resonated with a lot of people. He used a lot more misogyny in his original content, sexism in his original content. But as he got older and as he fell more and more in love with his wife, of course, he melted, he became a better person. Now, is he a perfect person? No. But he himself has worked very hard to be sort of a better person, right? And that's kind of the point. And he gives a lot of that credit to his wife, which is why I mentioned her, because he says specifically, without his wife, he never would have been introduced to these things. Like she introduced him into all of these politics around being black and having brown skin in a white supremacist world. So he gives her all of the social credit. And I'm saying in a world where like Dave Chappelle is as big as he is and doesn't take on any of the responsibility of his influence and tries to be like, I'm just trying to get money out here. Well, yeah, girl, but you already have a lot. How much more do you need? So again, when we have these conversations, I would like to see people grow in a direction and to take into consideration the way they're influencing people. And again, I know they say they are, and I agree that they are, but in their own lane. So my criticism of Dave Chappelle will be the same as anybody else, right? Hassan or anybody else. Like that's why I was trying to make the point yesterday that Hassan is no longer just what you guys think he is, which is like your friend or something. He is Dave Chappelle. And I know people are mad. They're like, why are you only mentioning right-wing grifters? I don't know how to say this. All the entertainers in this space are right-wing. That's why Hassan's disingenuous when he says, oh, I'm just a guy with a microphone. You're not just a guy with a microphone. You sound like these grifters. Do you want to restate what you're doing in this space, please? Name somebody on the left who says this. Like, name somebody who's progressive who goes, oh, I'm just a comedian. Nobody. And if they do say that, then they're wrong. Right? Like that's a wrong thing to say. To say, I'm not responsible, I'm just an artist. I'm not responsible, I'm just a singer. Who is saying that we would ever let them get away with that? Right? So that's why I'm not saying he's a grifter. I'm saying, hey, you're sounding like a grifter. If I was his marketing agent, I'd be like, you need to restate this because it's confusing. It's confusing to people. But I think eventually he'll probably do it soon, maybe, like own up to the responsibility of being somebody. But that's why we're upset with Dave Chappelle. He's not owning up to the responsibility of being somebody. Joe Rogan, he won't own up to the responsibility. Look at Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn talking as if they weren't absolutely like pawns in a game for Trump and this administration. And instead, they're like, man, I didn't know he was going to do this, man. Bro, own up to what you did. Own up to what you did so we can fucking move on. Because how am I supposed to build coalition with people who won't admit when they're wrong? Right? What am I supposed to do here? Now I can't trust you. I need to trust that you're not going to stab me in the back while we fight for liberation. And how am I going to know that if when it's convenient for you, you stab me in the back? We're going to talk about that today, okay? Building coalition, knowing if someone's going to stab you in the back, because that's really the question here. How are we supposed to build together towards a world that we all say we want, to be free and to express ourselves and to all exist with differing opinions, if when I turn around and leave your house after the potluck, you poisoned the food I ate? Make it make sense.